Hello and welcome to the Boro Breakdown podcast, the opposition show with Jonny and my guest for today, Brady from And He Takes That Chance podcast. Brady, thank you very much for joining me. And we're going to speak about Middlesbrough's trip to the John Smith Stadium. Firstly, how's it going at the moment? And secondly, are you a fan of John Smith's?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I'm good, Jonny. I'm not a fan of John Smith's. We have a sponsor, and they sponsor our podcast, Magic Rock Brewing, and they have a bar at the ground. So I tend to go there because I'm committed. I'm a committed person.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've completely forgot your first question. I was too busy.
I was asking how you were doing, but I'm all for to hear about this brewery at the ground. Right? Is it available for away fans as well, or is it just home fans specific?
No, it's so I go. Well, I forget what the sponsor name is now, but it's like the Kilner. It's the Kilner Bank. It's like the side, so the side closest to like the trees and stuff, and it's just like a little corner there. So it's like it's incredible. I don't know about the away end, but I keep seeing us on Footy with amazing food that I've never seen in the ground myself. So maybe that's for the away fans. Who knows?
Yeah, well, plenty to dissect with that one, to be honest. But I'll let the fans who go on Saturday chat about that a little bit more. But let's chat about some news around Huddersfield at the moment. And I appreciate this is really fresh. Kevin Nagel's taken over the club, and I know you probably won't have too much on him because he's a bit of a left field character. But how are you feeling about you guys getting taken over right now? What's led to this moment?
Well, to be honest, I'll try to give you a short answer, but it's kind of been rumbling on for the past 2 seasons. So even when we were doing really well and made the playoff final. So Dean Hoyle has obviously sold it to Kevin Nagel, but before that, he'd kind of taken it back over from Phil because Phil Hodgkinson, who was our previous owner, his businesses went into administration. So Dean's been owned it since pretty much like halfway through last season. And obviously we did really well. So he was kind of like interested. And then I think I always got the vibe because Dean, when he first took over from us in years ago, he was a fan. He still is a fan, and he was like really passionate. But it kind of felt like he only stepped in to stop the club going into administration. And I think this recent period, he's not been that. I don't think he's put as much in, and he had to step away from due to ill health the first time anyway. So, so since October 2022, he announced that he's stepping away from day-to-day operations and he wanted to sell the club. So this has been kind of going on for a while. So we brought in a guy called Dave Baldwin, who'd I think he's had a similar position of football director or managing director at Burnley, and he's worked for the EFL. He's come in to kind of oversee the deal. So this has been rumbling on for a while, and I think what these takeover things are like you hear it's just rumor mill. I've heard if we hear some stuff on the pod, not anything too juicy, but the amount of stuff I've heard from October till now, we were going to get taken over by Dutch group, a Canadian group, an American group. I think it might have been our pod. There was just so many crazy rumors. It's been rumbling on for a while. It got announced last week that a North American group had taken over. And then I think it was just, again, because it was the international break and there's not a lot of football to talk about, you kind of you're just analysing and overanalyzing it. So it was a bit like, well, why haven't they been announced yet? He's come in, he's been announced. I mean, I don't know much about the guy. I don't think anyone does. Looking at some of the reaction from the Sacramento Republic fans, he is, some people love him. Some people think he's not great and he didn't deliver on his promises. But, it's hard to judge because it's, exactly what you want when someone's taking over. So I think it'll be interesting to see when he kind of gives his first proper interview. I don't know. It's just interesting. And, no one really knows anything about the bloke. Looking at some of the stuff online, he's either worth 3 million or 3 billion. No one knows. Again, lots of answers, which is, what you want.
What's a couple of zeros between friends, what's a couple of zeros? Yeah.
Exactly. So I think it'd be interesting. I think the other thing I would say is, because of the kind of takeover situation, and the previous chairman, I think, although it'd be interested to see what he says and how his intention of the club, and he is in a, like, it is an invested group, so we don't know the other people at the time of recording. But I think, given all the previous context with the club, and given the poor performances this season, on and off the pitch, actions are going to have to be, we're going to have to see actions. We've heard a lot of words, we've heard a lot of positive talk. We're going to need to see real stuff because, as I sit here talking to you now, chances are we're going to be in League One next season. And in May last year, we were in the playoff final, 90 minutes away from the Premier League. So it's been a mess. But it's good that we have new owner and hopefully some new energy and new voices there.
So what's happened then? Because I appreciate in May last year, it was flying high. I mean, Carlos did leave the club and now he's back again with West Brom. But there seemed like a couple of players left as well who are key to that system. And it's just like plummeted. And I never understood it. I couldn't believe like the downturn you guys have had this year. But why do you think that's happened? Where do I start? When you say
exactly. Word for your listeners as well, it'll be boring. I mean, the fact is, like, Huddersfield, we have one of the lowest wage budgets in the league. I think we're actually in the bottom three for wage budgets. So last year was, I've got to be honest, when we lost 5-1 to Fulham at the start of the season, I wanted Carlos to leave, thought we were going to get relegated because he hadn't won 20-odd games before then. How wrong I was, and I'm happy to be wrong.
Yeah.
But it's just, again, it kind of taps into the chairman stuff, but I think Dean clearly wasn't putting the resources in. Yeah. So I think, Huddersfield had a set way of working. We have a director of football, which I know some managers are funny about, but I think in fairness to Carlos, and this is kind of a divisive one on the timeline, but for me, him getting to the playoff final with that team from last season is a bigger achievement than Wagner with the team he had getting us promoted to the Premier League.
Wow.
I think the quality was, it was an incredible job, and I didn't see it coming. So you've got to say fair play to Carlos. But I just think Carlos, having done that amazing achievement, we don't know for definite, but the rumours are he kind of wanted back in, and we were going to sell Lewis O'Brien, we were going to sell Harry Toffolo, and they, again, don't know for definite, but I think the expectation was do something similar, and but they weren't going to reinvest. So so I think it's all spawned from there. I think that I don't blame Carlos for leaving because let's be honest, like, I know football is tribal, it's tribalism, but I think if I was in that situation and someone said do exactly what you did with less resource, I'd be like, we'll see you later. I do have an issue with Carlos leaving so late. It was 2 weeks before the season started, and to be honest, this is why we need a new owner, because I just think this season has been such a mismanagement on and off the pitch that, to be honest, the fact that we are only 3 points off safety is some sort of miracle. We have been terrible this season. We deserve to be relegated, like we really do. So I think the fact that we're still in with a chance is amazing, really. But yeah, it was that. We hired Danny Schofield, who was one of Carlos's coaches. He's like a club legend. He admitted himself he wasn't ready for the job. It was 2 years too early. They also admitted that after they sacked him after 9 games when he didn't, he barely won any. We brought in, and I think at that point, you've got a manager who's never managed. You tried with a manager who never managed before. Obviously, we tried that with Carlos. We tried that with Wagner, although Wagner worked at Dortmund too. Worked. But I think the point there was to then get someone a bit experienced, ideally maybe get Warnock then or someone of a similar ilk, just steady the ship. What we did was we hired Mark Fotheringham, who was an assistant manager at Hertha Berlin who's never managed before. So you replaced a manager who hadn't managed with a manager who hadn't managed.
Yeah.
I just think it's that. I mean, the squad isn't... We've been a bit unlucky as well. I do think you make your own luck. But, our player of the season, in my opinion, Lee Nichols, injured for quite a large chunk of the season. Yuta Nakayama, who replaced Harry Toffolo, out for the season. Ollie Turton, who's our starting right back, out for a large part of the season. We have been unlucky with injuries, and it's just a combination of you're poorly coached, you're having a lot of injuries, and, luck just doesn't go your way. So it's been a lovely concoction of, frankly, mess. And as I say, we have an owner who's not who doesn't want to invest in the club anymore. So like when we did need recruitment in January transfer window, the players we signed who might still get us out of the situation. Fantastic transfer window if it was 2016 with Anthony Knockout and Martin Wycott, but it's 2023. So, I don't know. I think Warnock has, kind of distracted as best he can, and it's good to have someone who's managed the club and have that good figure. But it's just been a mess, Jonny. I mean, here we are chatting. I could talk to you for another 20 minutes, but I'd be bored. You'd be bored. The listeners would be bored. So I think I'll just stop it there.
To be honest, Brady, I'm fascinated by it. I just don't understand how things can be so mismanaged in such a short space of time. I think it's quite impressive in a way. You can go from the heights of a playoff final to the depths of despair, and that in itself, from trying to sell your best players, not replace them, to bring in a coach and following them, who really after about 4 or 5 games, it kind of felt, and even from his press conferences and looking from afar, looked like just the wrong character that was going to galvanize the group. And it just seemed that for a fan perspective, you're like, who is this nutcase and why have we hired him? And I feel like you waited too long for him. And I think it was the Blackpool game. I think it might have been his last game in charge. I think it was Blackpool. And correct me if I'm wrong on that. You were 2-0 up, right? 2-0 up, and you're away at Huddersfield, Blackpool, which asides, who pretty much deserve to probably go down this season. They're just as bad, and they probably would have been safe if they didn't hire Nick McCarthy either. But that's for another podcast. And I hope no Blackpool fan listens to that. But it just so you go, and then they're in really bad form, and then they score 2, and you just go this guy just cannot get results out of anyone in this group. And it just feels like everything that's happened this year, you're kind of in the position that you deserve to be in, right? So it's that's unfortunate. And for a fan, I feel like there's nothing worse than seeing something and going every Saturday and going, I really don't want to watch it today, or this is painful to watch. And then also having a podcast as well. I remember when we started and we had Tony Pulis as manager, and then Woodgate, and then we had Warnock, and it was just come on, there's 3 managers in a row where this football's been dire. But we got results at times, but it was painful, and even recording stuff. So I credit you a lot for going through this moment, because I know how difficult it is. But I spoke about Warnock, and we created the hashtag of Horny for Warny when he first came in and saved us, and he's got that history of saving a lot of teams. So what's your thoughts on him now? Are you horny for Warney? And also, do you think that he can actually keep you up?
Jonny, I'll always be horny for Warney. Don't worry about that.
Everyone is horny for Warney, right? I mean, I'm not a huge fan of him now, but we'll that's for again another podcast. But go on, you're horny for Warney, right?
Yeah, I think you talk about that Blackpool game. That was such a crucial week, and for me, again, we never know because it's what if and it's hypotheticals. But I think if we had Blackpool and we had Wigan straight after, I think if Warnock was in charge, we definitely would have won that Blackpool game because we did our best to throw it away. And I think we wouldn't have lost to Wigan. And then we'd probably be, out of it. So I think it was the best appointment they could make. I feel it was a couple of games too late. And, this run-in. But it's the Championship, it's you look at fixtures change every week. So, for example, it is a really tough run in. Obviously, we had Burnley, but then you look at, a couple of weeks pass, and then you're like, oh, all right. So, our last couple of games we play Sheffield United at home. Well, obviously, they're competing with you guys, but they may be promoted, or they may have lost to yourselves in the automatics and, hit a bad run of form. So, that's maybe winnable. It's at home. You never know. And then, our last game of the season is Reading at home. Rumours are they're going to get a points deduction. And if they do it, they would only be 3 points ahead of us. And we play them on the last day of the season. So I feel like that will be a very town ending if that is the case, if it's still that margin. But yeah, I think Warnock's come in. To be honest, he came in and he said he was doing it as a favour for Dean. I don't know because he's not said it, and you know what Warnock's like. He's not afraid to say things, but I don't think he realised how bad a job it was. I think he probably looked from the outside and was like, "All right, I can come in and can fix that." And when he came in, the first game we played was Birmingham, and the stadium was full. We even went behind in the first 5 minutes and still won the game, which just really hasn't happened this season. It just felt, I don't know. I think that you talked about going to games when it's miserable. That was the first game this season where I was like, this feels fun. It feels fun to be here. I'm glad we won, obviously, but like it almost didn't matter. It was just like a good atmosphere. And then we played Burnley and got thrashed by them, as many teams have this season.
Yeah.
And then I think just a lot of people were like, well, yeah, I don't know, like, yeah, it's Burnley, but I'm disappointed with how we played. And it's like, yeah, it depends on the next result. And then we played Coventry and we lost 4-0. And to be honest, Coventry were really good. You know, Victor Gyökeres and Gustavo Hamer, excellent players. The first goal was a back pass that, you know, just went wrong. And you could just see the confidence, like the confidence just drained out the players. And I was like, if Warnock can't even get something out of this, it's a bit of a concern. And then, you know, before the international break, we played Norwich. And to be honest, because things just felt so down, I don't know what the attendance was. I think they put 17,000, but looking at it, it was, you know, it was more like 7. And Norwich, we managed to get a draw there, and then we unexpectedly beat Millwall. So, yeah, I think Warnock's like the best person you can get in this situation. You know, he's used to it. My concern is, you know, we talked about that quality of the squad and some of the injuries to our key men. I don't know if this is in your questions, but the fact that we've loaned out Sorba Thomas to Blackburn, because I don't know why, but that's just such a stupid decision. Like, there's a lot of things going against us, but I think if anyone's going to do it, it's Warnock. And I think we do have a chance. I think that's the thing. Like, we are still only 3 points out of it. And I hate, you know, I wouldn't want to stay up this way because you don't want to see other clubs struggle. But I think points deductions are probably going to play a part in it. Yeah, who knows? I think it depends as the games go on. Obviously, you've got those teams in mid-table who might not have a lot to play for. And you know what it's like. You can either beat them or they suddenly like put 4 past you because the, you know, pressure's off. So, yeah, I don't know. I think we've got the best chance of staying up that I think we've had all season, weirdly. But I don't know. Heart says I think we'll stay up just, but head probably because of everything that's gone wrong this season, we do deserve to be relegated. So weirdly, like if we do, I'm not going to blame Warnock for that, and I've kind of accepted it.
Yeah, like with those games as well, like you mentioned, Sheffield United, you got Reading on the final day, and the games in between where you're playing like those mid-table sides, like the games against like United and Reading are probably a bit more interesting for both sets of players, right? Because you know you've both got something to play for. It's a bit of a tense atmosphere, but the teams that you play like in mid-table, they just have that freedom, don't they? And they're just like, well, we have nothing to play for, and then you're saying that they can either be like really up for it and galvanized for next season, or it can be on the holidays and like you just don't know what you're going to get, and that is the scary part of being in it. But you can only do what you can do, and I think like you're saying that I think you've probably got the best manager to come in at the right time to keep you and hopefully keep you up, because I feel like he can do it. It's just, and if he does do it, you'll never hear the end of it. But just to let you know that he still does stuff about Middlesbrough, and he didn't even do stuff like you saying how good Chuba was one week, and then he sent him out on loan and hated him, and now he's the reason why he's doing so well. So it's a narrow spinner. But you know what I mean. But yeah. I think he will keep you up, though. I am pretty confident in that. But in terms of like the games now of how you've played like over the last few weeks, how is he setting you up? And is there anyone out of the group that you've got who we should look out for, who's not injured?
Yeah. So he's setting us up. Well, quite recently, he's setting us up in a 4-2-3-1. So I think we look a lot more comfortable with a back four. Weirdly, like I actually think when you look at our defense, it's not actually that bad. Like, you know, Mikel Hellick for me has been signing of the season. He's been incredible. Obviously, did really good at Barnsley. Tom Lees was really good last season, you know, and he's kind of proven this level. And Nichols is out for the season, but we've got Thomas Vaslik, who won the Europa League with Sevilla 2 seasons ago. So, like, it's actually quite a good defence. But I think what you'll probably watch out for is our wingers are quite defensive. So he's been playing Josh Koroma, who obviously, again, this kind of tells you the circumstances, but he was on loan at Portsmouth from League One at the start of the season. Oh, wow. And he's back, and he's really turned it around, and it's good because he had a really good season in lockdown and then got injured and was out for it. And you know what it's like, you know what Twitter's like. It's like people were kind of wondering, like, oh, is he just one of those like lockdown players who did really well? But I think what Warnock's added to his game is he's tracking back a lot, and he is doing a lot of the hard defensive work that you don't get a lot of credit for. And then we have, so he's on the right, and then we've got Ben Jackson, who's he's like our B team captain, and he's typically a left back, but he's been, kind of tasked with the defensive thing. So I think they're the kind of key ones to watch out. Obviously, we've got Jonathan Hogg, who everyone knows, and I'm sure he'll clatter whoever's in your midfield on Saturday, because that's just what he does. And then Danny Ward's kind of, I think that's really interesting, because Warnock's managed him at other places, and Warnock has said he's the best player we have at this club. Wardy came off the bench and got the goal against Millwall, so he's, I think he's quite crucial to us. But he did play Martin Waghorn against Millwall, and Waghorn, I think his legs have gone a bit, but he's gonna. Town haven't had a lot of strikers that'll elbow defenders and tussle with them, and I think he's actually, we kind of need that, especially when you're struggling, just anything. So, I don't know. Like, when you're a team at the bottom of the table, you don't have loads to focus on, because we really struggle to score goals. I think if you score two, I can't see Huddersfield getting a draw out of that. I think you'll probably win that game. So the classic cliche, I think it really depends coming on to Saturday who scores first. I think it'll be interesting to see, and I suppose this will be the worry in your fan base, but I think Warnock will want to prove something against you, and I don't know if it is just that extra incentive. I'm hoping for that, but I think you should win this game. But I thought Millwall should have beaten us, and look what happened. So you never know, but you probably will win, so I wouldn't worry about it.
Brady, I'm going to change your mind in about 10 seconds here. So you were saying about going ahead and how important it is. The last 4 games Neil Warnock's managed against Middlesbrough, he's won 1-0. And his record against Middlesbrough in his career, he's won 10, he's drawn 0, and he's lost twice. So he has a very, very good record against Boro, scoring 18 goals and 6 conceded, won the last 4 1-0. And he just loves beating us, and I feel like he will love to get one over on us as well, and really play the villain on the day. I think if anyone watches Sheffield United when he goes to Bramall Lane, although he's a Sheffield United supporter, he goes there and does the bluebirds, does the fist to the fans, really likes to rub it in. So if you do score first, history's on your side, to be honest. And who knows? I remember him when he was manager of Rotherham, and we were managed by Aitor Karanka, and we were flying in the league. We needed to keep winning, really, because it was starting to heat up between the playoffs and the automatics as well. And we go there and we just put in the worst display I've ever seen. Got absolutely Neil Warnock 1-0, and it was one of the worst games I think I've ever seen. And I think you'd probably be hoping for something the same, right? So now that in your mind, so with Warnock's records and his last few games as well, I want to ask you about your predictions for Saturday. How are you feeling about the game? Do you feel a lot more confident now that I've mentioned that?
That is good, but I just records always get broken. Do you know what I mean? I think you can.
They
depends
do.
whether you're a glass half full or half empty. That is surprising. I didn't know that, and I will definitely be using that for our podcast. So thanks for that. But I just worry. I just think the only thing is if we, I think if we get a result, it's obviously down to. It's an obvious thing to say, but it's down to how you guys play. If you're slightly off it, then yeah. And if we score first, then say maybe. But I just look at your players, Cameron Archer is a player I love at this level. He's in red hot form. Obviously, Chuba Akpom. Again, where'd that come from? Carrick getting the absolute best out of Chuba Akpom. That worries me. You've got people who are firing, and I just think it depends. Because I do think with Millwall, they were probably expecting to beat us, and we got that freak result. Really, it was I think it was one of our 2 shots on target. So I know we're going to have the home crowd behind us, but I think Carrick's shown that he's a really good manager, and I think he'll be look what happened to Millwall. We can't let this happen. So again, I don't mind us. Sounds awful. I wouldn't expect us to win. I'm not expecting us to win. I think what's really important is the manner of the performance for me. So, if we lose, for example, let's say we lose 2-1 to you guys, but we've made a good account of ourselves, I think that will really encourage us. Whereas if it is like a Coventry where, you score early and then it ends up being 4-0, obviously that's going to be really damaging. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, to be honest, if you'd said to me you're going to have 4 points from Norwich, Millwall, and Middlesbrough, I'd probably take that. So, yeah, we'll see. But I don't think it's not this game that I'm kind of targeting. But yeah, that Warnock factor, you never know. Again, it really is first goal goes. I think if you score first, you'll definitely win. I think if we score first, I don't think we'll lose. But I'm not saying we'll necessarily win the game, because I just don't think that. Although I talked about how the defense isn't too bad, it's just a confidence thing, and I think you guys have got red hot strikers. So basically, a long-winded way of saying I think it's probably going to be 1-1, but yeah, I expect you guys to win.
Yeah, I would like us to win. I mean, I just want us to get over like the Neil Warnock factor in terms of like I cannot let this man curse us again. I feel really nervous about it. I really do. I think just with everything that's been going on with Huddersfield this season, I know it's been bad, but for us, it's like this could be the most typical Boro thing: a team that's red hot in form, and then go to a side that's struggling on and off the pitch. Injuries, former manager, it just screams 1-0 Huddersfield, right? So that's what it does scream like. I'm hoping we do get something from the game. But Brady, that's it. Thank you so much for coming on. I really enjoyed chatting to you, like I always do anyway. But Boro travel to the Terriers to try and close the gap on Sheffield United, but the old guard of Warnock is standing in their way. This has been the Boro Breakdown podcast, and that was all your Boro Matchday chatter and opposition preview in a pod. Up the Boro Breakdown.